Good morning, everyone. Today we will continue the class of induction of labor. Now, methods of induction of labor. So, what are the methods for the induction of labor? So, medical induction, surgical induction, and combined induction. So, medical inductions, drugs commonly used are prostaglandins, that is prostaglandin E2 and prostaglandin E1, oxytocin and mifepristone. We had already seen in last class. So, prostaglandins. These prostaglandins basically they act locally, and a local gel is applied as we have seen. A tablet or suppository is there, and that has to be kept for vaginal, and it is primarily important for the ripening of the cervix, and that is the role of PGE2, prostaglandin E2. Whereas prostaglandin F2, they are important for myometrial contractions. So PGE2, prostaglandin E2 is having collagenollytic property, as we have already seen that it will dissolve in dissolution of the cervical tissue, so that it will get ripened, and it will make the cervix favorable for the labor. Again, intracervical application of dinoprostone gel is dinoprostone gel is the gold standard for cervical ripening. This is important. And this is why a question: what is gold standard for cervical ripening in the induction of labor? Is dinoprostone, and it is generally repeated for every 6 hourly for 3 to 4 doses as per requirement of the patient. It varies from patient to patient, and patient should be kept in bed on lying down position for 30 minutes after the application of the gel, or the whenever the tablet is kept, or whenever the suppository is kept for vaginal. Fetal heart rate should be monitored, uterine contraction should be monitored, and the TPR-BP of the patient is monitored. Next one is misoprostol. So transvaginal or oral, it is given for the induction of the labor, and it is generally contraindicated, as we had already seen contraindication. If at all the cesarean section has been done, then it is contraindication. Methods of induction of labor and common clinical conditions. So medical methods, surgical methods, and combined methods we already know. So for the clinical condition where medical methods are indicated are whenever the case of IUD is there, premature rupture of membrane is there, and whenever in combination with surgical induction is there, artificial rupture of membrane has to be done, and along with that medical methods are applied, like prostaglandins or misoprostol is applied. Surgical methods are generally done in appropriate placenta, chronic hydramnios, severe preeclampsia and eclampsia, in combination with medical induction, and to place a scalp electrode for electronic fetal monitoring is important, and it has to be done where surgical methods are indicated. Again, combined methods to shorten the induction delivery interval, to lessen that medical methods and surgical methods both are combined. Merits and demerits of oxytocin and prostaglandins in the induction of labor. So oxytocin comparatively cost wise cheaper, stability wise and need for refrigeration, may be kept for the 1 month at 30 degrees centigrade. IV administration is there, and effectiveness, it is less with low bishops for IUFD, and lesser week of pregnancy than oxytocin is less effective. Side effects: hyperstimulation of the uterus in high doses. Again, systemic side effects: water intoxication might be there, and antidiuretic effect whenever administered in high doses. Now, prostaglandins comparatively, it is also less costly. Stability wise, needs refrigeration, and it is stable generally at room temperature. Administration vaginally and orally both. Effectiveness is more effective in those cases, and it has a collagenollytic activity. So it will sensitize myometrium also, and cervical ripening is comparatively common than oxytocin. Side effects: low dose schedule. It has got minimal side effects, so it may tachysystole may be there, and it may last longer, but the side effects are comparatively less. Systemic side effects may be troublesome, especially oral and intravenous infusion is here. Vaginal route, if at all administered locally vaginally, so side effects are minimal and no antidiuretic side effects. Surgical induction of labor. So these medical methods we had already seen. Now surgical induction. In surgical induction, commonest one is artificial rupture of membrane and stripping of membranes. The low rupture of membrane also is there. So mechanism of onset of this labor. It may be related to stretching of the cervix, separation of the membrane, and reduction of amniotic fluid volume. So effectiveness of this low rupture of membrane, it depends on the state of the cervix. Means already we had seen the Bishop score and station of the presenting part, whether the station is in -1 or it is in +1 or it is 0. It depends on that. Again, advantages, may it is having surgical methods are having high success rate. Again, a chance to absorb amniotic fluid for blood and meconium are much more whenever the low rupture of membrane is done. Again, access to fetal scarp electrode is easy, and intrauterine pressure catheter or fetal scalp blood sampling is comparatively easy by surgical induction. Limitations. So it cannot be employed whenever the cervix is unfavorable. Whenever Bishop score is less than 6, 6 means generally we had seen it should be more than 6, but whenever it is less than 5, then it is not indicated. Surgical method is also not indicated. Contraindications whenever the intrauterine fetal death is there. So generally medical methods are indicated. Surgical methods are unnecessary. Harassment should not be given to the patient by surgical intervention. So medical methods are indicated in IUFD. So again, maternal AIDS. Whenever there is HIV infection is there, so there are chances the unnecessary health risk factors should not be there to the obstetrician. So maternal AIDS is there, then it is contraindicated. It should not be done. Surgical intervention for the induction should not be done. And whenever there is genital active herpes infection is there, this is also contraindication for surgical induction of labor. So next one, immediate beneficial effects of artificial rupture of membrane. So if immediate benefits, we can see the blood pressure is lowering in eclampsia and preeclampsia. Preeclampsia, eclampsia cases, the blood pressure lowers by artificial rupture of membrane. Maternal distress is lower in polyhydramnios. Again, relief of tension of in abruptio placentae and initiation of labor. And again, hazards. Next one is hazards. What are the hazards of artificial rupture of membrane? Hazards mean there is no scope for the retreating from the decision of the delivery. Means once you had ruptured the membrane, delivery has to be done. Either by it is vaginal delivery, either by cesarean delivery has to be done once the membranes has been ruptured. There are chances of cord prolapse. The risk is low with engaged head. If at all the head is engaged, or the rupture of membrane with head fixed in the pelvic brim, then there are less risk for the chance of cord prolapse. But if at all the head is not engaged, then there are chances of cord prolapse. Again, amniotitis might be there as the membranes are ruptured. Infection might travel upwards, and amniotitis may be there. Accidental injury to placenta, cervix, uterus, fetal parts, vasa previa if at all present, then the complications are much more major. You all know these conditions: placenta, vasa previa. Again, if at all simple, if at all the membranes are ruptured, then there might be injury to placenta, injury to cervix, uterus, fetal parts. All these are there. Again, chances of lichen embolism are there. Some more chances are there, and this is life-threatening condition. This is the diagram for the method for the low rupture of membrane by artery forceps. Here we can see in this diagram there is uh, pour water, bag of pour water. This is called as bag of pour water, and this bag of pour water is ruptured with the help of this artery forceps. Generally, this is ruptured at the low level from the posterior aspect. Posterior level, we have to go and rupture the membranes. These membranes we have to rupture. Then after the rupture of membrane, the following things are to be assessed. So first one is what are the things that are assessed. So first one is color of the amniotic fluid. Again, status of the cervix has to be assessed. Station of the head to be seen. Detection of cord prolapse if any, and again if at all chances are there. Fetal heart rate should be checked, and if at all high risk cases are there, electrodes should be placed on the fetal skull for the monitoring. And again, sterile vulval pad is applied to prevent the infection, and prophylactic antibiotics should be given. Hazards of this are artificial rupture of membrane, low rupture of membrane. This is basically the first and foremost one. If at all head is not engaged, then chances of cord prolapse is there. Uncontrolled escape of amniotic fluid. Simple. If at all you rupture the membrane, the amniotic fluid will leak out, and there are chances of uncontrolled escape of amniotic fluid, and placental abruption will be there, and unnecessary complication to the mother and the fetus will be there. Again, injury to the cervix or to the presenting part, if properly not ruptured, then presenting part generally to the head, injury might be there. Cervical tear might happen if at all proper instrument is not applied. Again, rupture of vasa previa not diagnosed, and rupture had been done, then the maternal fetal blood both loss will be there, and the life of both will be at risk. Amnionitis, as we had already seen, per traveling of infection because of the rupture of membrane. Again, the next topic is stripping of membrane. So, stripping of membrane, this means digital separation of chorioamniotic membranes from the wall of the cervix and the lower uterine segment. From the lower uterine segment and from the cervix, digitally we separate the membranes. Stripping of membranes, we digitally we separate the membrane from the lower uterine segment and cervix. What are the criteria that should be fulfilled before the rupture of membrane? Is the fetal head must be well applied to the cervix. Means head should be engaged properly applied to the cervix. The cervix should be dilated so as to allow the introduction of examiner's finger. Means complete dilatation should be there. Again, these are the criteria. What are the merits and demerits of this low rupture of membrane? If at all oxytocin is applied and amniotomy has been done, what are the merits and demerits? So, exclusive indication of oxytocin is in IUD, in amniotomy in antepartum hemorrhage, hydramnios, preeclampsia, eclampsia. And prerequisites for this is it can be employed irrespective of the state of the cervix and station of the head. This is for oxytocin, and the effectiveness of this oxytocin is quite satisfactory. But if at all amniotomy is done, the procedure if, fails, then initiate the labor for the 4 hour. If at all it is not initiating the labor for the 4 hours, oxytocin should be acquired. It should be given, and oxytocin supplementation is must if at all labor is not progressing because of amniotomy. Again, special benefit if at all oxytocin is given and labor is not progressing, then reversible decision can be taken to stop the labor. But if at all amniotomy has been done, lower rupture of membrane has been done, then we cannot look back, and labor has to be done either by vaginal delivery or by cesarean, but labor has to be done. Again, prerequisites for low rupture of membrane: the cervix should be dilated and head should be preferably engaged. And if at all head is not engaged, then cord prolapse chances are much more. So this is all about the methods of induction of labor, and I hope you have understood the topic. And if at all you are having any query, mention in the comment box. I'll try to resolve it. Thank you. Thank you very much.